First, we have to get to the issue of Speaker Mike Johnson. He has a Marjorie Taylor guillotine hanging over his head right now. She's prepared a motion to vacate the chair. She'd like to get rid of this guy, maybe. She's got the threat hanging out there. But why is that? Why would it be worth scrapping this Speaker of the House? For more on that, Bradley Devlin is here. He's a political editor for the American Conservative, and he joins us now. Hello, Bradley. Good to talk to you again, sir.
Hi, Vince. Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right. So, like I said, Marjorie Taylor Greene has basically issued the threat. She's not ready to carry it out yet. But what are we concerned about right now with Speaker Johnson? What are we on guard for?
I think the number one thing is Ukraine aid. If Mike Johnson decides to negotiate this package of Ukraine aid without any type of border security and bring it to the floor because he's afraid of a discharge petition, then it could be the last straw. Today, MTG had a letter with J.D. Vance to OMB Director Young about how the Biden administration has hidden the figures of real Ukraine aid from the American public. And finally, after nearly a year and a quarter, they are getting some concrete answers or giving some concrete answers over to Congress about it. And so MTG playing a role in that and having this discharge petition, or not the discharge petition, the motion to vacate in the hopper already means that she is poised, if she is not pleased, to trigger that against Mike Johnson. So Mike Johnson's path forward is don't do anything on Ukraine, right? The Biden administration has another $4 billion of presidential drawdown authority. Don't do anything. Don't just sacrifice yourself on the altar of Ukraine as Mitch McConnell has.
But my impression is the White House very badly wants Ukraine money. Is that right? Like, in other words, this is good leverage if you wanted to use it.
Right. It is good leverage if you wanted to use it, which is why it was so disappointing when Mitch McConnell cut James Lankford off at the knees and said you can't ask for any concrete metric to make border crossings go down and dispense Ukraine aid only if the border conditions improve. Mike Johnson needs to be willing to not bring anything to the floor and say, if you don't meet voters' number one priority, which is fixing the problem at the southern border, you're not going to get Ukraine funding. So you either reveal that you actually don't feel like Ukraine is all that important if you're the Biden administration, or you actually play ball with conservatives. And, the Biden administration may want this money really, really badly, but thus far, they can talk a lot about Ukraine aid, but at the end of the day, Mike Johnson needs to have the nerve to say, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep pushing for H.R. 2.
So one of the retorts I keep hearing from Republicans as they try and explain why, well, they might have to pass Ukraine aid without any meaningful fix to the border is like, well, no matter how much money or no matter what laws we have on the books, Biden is just going to refuse to enforce them anyway. So, we may as well just do the thing that we broadly agree to, which is send Ukraine more money. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I just think it's patently ridiculous. The only way in which Mike Johnson would be absolutely forced to consider something on Ukraine is if Republicans decided to join a Democrat started discharge petition. And so these moderate Republicans who join on to that effort, if they do, they would be instantly punished in the ballot box by Republican voters and punished in institutional Washington for doing that, right? You'd get primaried instantly, and you'd be on the outs. So until that happens and there's an appetite for conservatives to join that discharge petition, Mike Johnson should not do anything.
Also, as I think about it, too, it's like there are legal requirements that don't just deal with the executive branch. You also can have nationwide, well, I guess it does in some sense, but nationwide e-verify, where, in other words, you have to follow the law if you're a business owner. You have to verify that the people you're hiring are eligible to be in the United States at all. Why not force e-verify as a condition here? That would be a quick way to start getting this out-of-control system under a lot more control than it is now.
Yeah, I'm a strong supporter of e-verify, Vince, but listen, my office isn't so far away from K Street. I think I could throw a few rocks and hit a few lobbyists walking down in Farragut Square right now who aren't too enthusiastic about e-verify, and that's kind of the problem. You've seen this problem with the FISA fight going on too right now, right? Where Mike Turner gets up there and says, no American citizen has ever been spied on using FISA. Are you kidding me? That's a joke.
A lie.
Yeah, it's a lie and it's a joke, and it's because a lot of these Republicans who might dress themselves in America First or MAGA garb are secretly still, neocons who bend over backward for the intel community and who bend over backward for the tech lobby.
Let's talk about this. So I think it was December, right? Last time this came up, and they gave it the old can kick until April. They said, FISA, we're going to have to, we'll temporarily delay a full reauthorization until April because it was contentious back then. And I remember at the time, and I'm not just trying to pick on Ted Cruz, but Ted Cruz is the one who stands out to me. He was among the Republicans who you'd think, okay, this is the constitutional law guy. He voted to renew FISA in the Senate, in his capacity in the Senate. But a lot of Republicans did, in both House and Senate. They said, we're going to keep doing this as it exists now. And there's all sorts of rampant warrantless surveillance of Americans that's being done through a surveillance program that's literally designed to spy on foreigners and not American citizens. And this has come up for years, and every time Republicans have kicked the can. We are now approaching the deadline again. We're just, a couple days out from it, aren't we, Bradley?
Yeah, we are. We're April 19th, Section 702 is set to expire, and Mike Johnson can either get this deal done, negotiating between, the conservatives who are more concerned about Americans' privacy rights and conservatives who are more concerned about national security, American privacy rights be damned. That dynamic is really well captured by the House Intelligence Committee, who's on the side of the intel agencies, and the House Judiciary Committee led by Jim Jordan. And in this dynamic, you kind of see, I'm old enough to remember when the Patriot Act passed. It's actually good to see the right has an appetite now to defend Americans' privacy rights. But, if Mike Johnson can't manage to get a deal done, namely get warrants attached to this Judiciary Committee bill that the Rules Committee is currently marking up, then he might be forced to pass FISA under suspension of the rules. And then the question remains, well, is anyone ticked off enough about FISA to go to MTG and say, hey, pull that motion to vacate out of the hopper. You've got me and one other person, and we ride at dawn. We're going to vacate Speaker Johnson. I don't know if that were to transpire. I don't know what goes from there. I don't know if Johnson has a chance to return to the speakership and if he'd be saved by Democrats, or we'd be thrown into another week and a half of chaos.
This is a super important moment. This is super important. Do you think that the right, those who care about protecting the privacy rights of American citizens, is going to be able to drum up the attention that this deserves? Obviously, you're giving it attention right now, Bradley. Will there be others?
Well, the reason that it failed partially in December is because of those conservatives objecting. They tried again in February, but the Intel Committee was not happy with some of the provisions in the Judiciary Committee originated bill. They've now taken that bill from Representative Lee to, take out some of the red lines and then maybe add by amendment this warrant provision that the Judiciary Committee really, really wants. Which
it's amazing. By the way, can I just pause on that for a moment? It's just amazing. What they're doing already is unconstitutional. They're surveilling Americans without a warrant, any meaningful due process. And all we're asking for them to do is add a redundancy to the law that says they have to follow the Constitution.
Right. Yeah. And that's just an added layer of absurdity to this whole thing. Turner's been out there trying to sink this. They've leaned on Mike Pompeo for some reason to come in and say this is going to be a fundamental threat to American security, and a bunch of other, kind of shills for the intel agency.
Garbage.
Like, I don't think the right needs to hear anything else from Mike Pompeo, former director of the CIA, about why we need to be spied on still.
If he's rooting on warrantless surveillance, it's garbage.
Right. But Mike Johnson would be in such a difficult position because if this is brought up under suspension, it probably passes. So does the speaker bring it up under suspension and say, I'm not voting for this, but we can't let FISA lapse? I don't know if that's going to satisfy the appetites of conservatives. Now, there has been some people on the Intel Committee that are willing to consider these provisions because of what you just said. This is basically already a requirement under law. We would just be reaffirming it. Nothing else is really going to change. So even their reasoning is, though it's kind of twisted, they could be voting in favor of this bill when it eventually comes to the floor. And so I have hope for FISA reform because of the pressure on Mike Johnson right now. But I am always nervous that the intel community will kick into high gear, because if you remember in February when we were having this fight last time, all of a sudden from on high, the intel community said, "Oh, there's some massive, massive threat, code red," and it turned out that the Russians are considering using nuclear technology in space, which is like, of course, everyone's kind of trying to do that. But they made it seem like for 48 hours that a nuclear war was imminent.
Well, yeah, and also Russia already has capabilities. Russia already has capabilities to disable satellites. I mean, it's like the idea that, an emerging threat for them to disable satellite. No, it's not emerging at all. So it's like, stop it. They use the scare, as you're pointing out, of a security threat in order to rob you of liberty. And so enough of that. Is it your impression, Bradley Devlin, that Republican lawmakers and their congressional offices are scared of the public noticing this debate and holding them accountable?
Oh, I think so. And I think that's why you've seen a lot of the reporting on this issue kind of be those interbeltway outlets like Punchbowl, like Politico. They don't want this getting out into the public, because if people actually knew the type of abuses, left and right, that happened with FISA, everyone would be enraged. And you see this type of cooperation happening in the Judiciary Committee right now, where Jim Jordan and Jerry Nadler are working together to get this warrant provision added to FISA reauthorization. You see Representative Lofgren, a progressive Democrat from California, working with Representative Davidson, a conservative from Ohio, to make that happen as well. And then you see the proof in the pudding, right? In 2023, a court order found that Americans were spied on using FISA who ended up at the Capitol on January 6, 2021. You saw
sorry, just to be clear, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act was used to spy on Americans inside of the United States Capitol on January 6th.
Yes, and all the data collection that went into prosecuting some of those cases by the FBI. The FBI also pulled information from FISA on people who participated in the George Floyd riots. And so once the right and left get word of that in the grassroots, then they're incredibly angry about this type of thing. But until then, that's why I think Jim Jordan is really trying to get out in front of the issue. That's why I think you see a lot of these Freedom Caucus and associated representatives talking about this issue more than they ever have, because this is the first time in a long time, right? I believe it's 5 years, that we've had the chance to actually do something about FISA. And what has happened in those 5 years? We've only learned more about the abuses at the highest level, right? FISA wasn't a Section 02 issue with Carter Page, but we saw this all with the Steele dossier and Russiagate, and how much FISA played a role in all of that. So this is our best crack at doing something about it, and it would be really shameful, I think, on the Speaker's part to not take advantage of this opportunity when it seems like everyone on the right has some leverage here, more leverage than we've ever had in discussing data privacy issues in the past 20 years.
Lastly, Bradley Devlin, also the United States House of Representatives, although nobody brings it up anymore, has impeached the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Now, as we know from the multiple Trump impeachments, there's a whole walk down the hallway ceremony that's supposed to happen with these articles of impeachment. It has not happened yet. There's some conversation about whether it's going to happen at the end of this week or maybe the beginning of next. The Senate is already planning on suffocating. They want to smother this thing with a pillow. The Senate Democrats want this thing to go away. What's going to happen there?
Yeah, I'm still waiting on being able to purchase my commemorative pen from the signing of articles of impeachment of Alejandro Mayorkas. If you remember, that's what Nancy Pelosi did with the Trump impeachment round one, I believe. Listen, I think the Senate will do all that it can to ignore this issue. I think that Schumer is going to have an ally in Mitch McConnell, because Mitch McConnell has proven time and time again he wants to do nothing to actually secure the southern border. And so, I'm just encouraging members of Congress to continue their oversight efforts. Obviously, they're planning on doing so in April. Last month, they sent 50-plus different subpoenas to the Biden administration and relevant officials to come and testify. It's just taking, a big scythe to everything they can find in the Biden administration and publicizing it as much as possible. So that type of oversight, I think, is welcome, especially in an election year. It's just good politics for Republicans But in terms of actually making change, obviously that Senate trial is going nowhere. There's no way he's going to be impeached in the first place. I think Schumer will do everything to bury it. And I think that Republicans in the Senate should tell McConnell, hey, that's great that you're stepping down in November, but you need to step down right now because we have way too much at stake. We have FISA, we have Ukraine aid, we have appropriations that are supposed to start according to statute this month. So we're going to be either getting appropriations done or being in another continuing resolutions.
But Bradley, he can't step down now. He can't step down now. He needs to make Ukraine funding permanent and name a successor who can help undermine Trump if he comes back to office. So, he's got things to do.
Right, exactly. So the Senate conference, by doing nothing, is allowing Mitch McConnell to tie the hands of President Trump if and when President Trump returns to office.
Right.
And so we simply can't afford that. Not even to mention the campaign side of things. Mitch McConnell is still overseeing, the Senate Leadership Fund, and all of his people are overseeing that. And last time in 2022, when the map seemed to work in our favor, well, what did he do? He pulled out all the funding from close races like Blake Masters in Arizona and decided he was going to bet on Mehmet Oz in Pennsylvania, who never stood a chance.
Well, I got to say, though, at the rate that John Fetterman's going, we may have elected the more conservative senator there. I have no idea. We'll see.
It's a very interesting commentary when someone recovers from a brain injury and they become more conservative. I don't know. Amazing? Maybe there's something there.
We'll have you back to talk about that issue and so much more. Bradley Devlin, thank you, from the American Conservative. Good to talk to you today.